So to not have like micromanagement around that, to really allow that person to almost act as like a CEO of their own role. Everyone should kind of be a CEO of their position and say, I trust you. As a corporate exec, it was always, you just can't stop moving. Go, go, go.
Right.
Get it done as much as possible. I can give more, working all hours, there's more I can give. Looking back now, I realize how untrue that actually is. We need to be in a calm state, in a restful state in order to create. And to be the most successful leader and executive, you have to be creative. You have to constantly be recreating and creating everything. To just assume that stress is a part of it and that it's standard and you just have to deal with it, I think that's a total red flag.
What if the very traits that make someone a high-performing leader, like drive, perfectionism, relentless standards, you get it, are the same ones quietly pushing them toward burnout? Today's guest, Jessica Tracy, learned firsthand that external success can mask a nervous system stretched past its limits. At the height of a thriving corporate career, Jessica looked like she was winning by every traditional measure, but beneath the surface, mounting anxiety and pressure forced a reckoning that reshaped both her life and her definition of effective leadership. After nearly 2 decades in high-stakes corporate environments, Jessica is now a certified Jungian coach and consultant, helping organizations rethink mental health, leadership resilience, and sustainable performance. In this episode, you'll learn how to spot hidden burnout early, regulate internal pressure, and lead with far more clarity and sustainability. So, welcome to the Badass Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Gill-Nelms, and each week I sit down with badass humans who are pushing the limits in their careers, companies, and lives. So, are you ready to talk leadership without the corporate BS? Then let's do it. Okay, welcome back, Badass Leaders community. I am very excited to talk with Jessica Tracy today. We're going to talk about some Jungian style alternative medicine therapy. We're going to talk about her doctoral work, postdoctoral or doctoral work that you're doing right now.
Doctor.
And the journey. Yep. Okay. And the journey getting into it. And hey, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you should, because you can see her harp in the background, and maybe she'll share with us what she's doing later on today with that harp as well. But Jessica, I'm excited to kick this off and talk to you. So before we get too deep into any of those topics that I just mentioned and the amazing work that you're doing, let's peel the onion a little bit and give us a quick version of your professional journey. How did you get to start in your corporate world, and what ultimately pulled you in the very different direction that you are leading now?
Yeah, great question. So I went into insurance first, interestingly enough. I remember being in college and knowing I wanted to get into sales, because for me, sales was an opportunity where you could make a ton of money and have a flexible schedule. They were the two things when I was in college, was that they were my goals. So I had talked to a bunch of people, and what I had learned about insurance is it's a very technical sale. So, if you can get really consultative and really good at problem solving, then that would be a great route to go. And so I said, okay, I guess I'll get into insurance. That sounds like a good idea. So I went that route. I started out as an underwriter and then moved into benefits consulting and business development. And I did that for about a decade. And then I got to where I'm like, what am I doing? This is not very fun. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And to be honest, at that point, I had finally, reached the time where I had hit all these quotas. I was finally, starting to make the money. I was
Crushing it. Yes.
Yeah, I was finally there where I was making all the money. I had the freedom. And then finally I was like, this isn't it. And I remember when I told them I was going to leave, they were like, Jessica, you have been working towards this since you got here, and you finally are here, and now you're getting all the bonuses and you're making the commission, and now you're walking away from it. But my heart wasn't aligned, and I could just feel it, and something was off. So I said, I can't chase money. I just can't do it. So I needed to go a different route. And then I moved into clinical genetics next. And with that was just something that I found an opportunity in Silicon Valley. I had never worked at a startup before. Genetics and how it impacted someone was just fascinating to me. So I said, you know what, this sounds something like I can really help people, pretty interesting. So I went that route. I did that for about 6 years, and I really did enjoy it for a long time, and I would say all the while, I would say towards the end of it, what I really started to see was I was not in the best place. I was really successful in sales. I was crushing it. I was making, a ton of money. I was traveling. I had a house. I had all the things that I thought I wanted. I was married to a wonderful man. We're not married anymore, but like nothing was sitting right. The marriage didn't feel, like it was 100% right for us, and the job wasn't fully aligned, and I just felt like things were off. So I really needed to start to kind of like peel back the layers and peel back the onions and see like what is going on here, like what do I really truly want. And to be honest, at the same time, I was also really struggling. The whole time I was really struggling with mental health. So I was really struggling with anxiety, with insomnia, with PTSD from some challenging experiences when I was younger that I had never fully worked through. I went to therapy, but it just didn't do it for me. I was having panic attacks. So there's all this stuff that was coming up. One, because I wasn't fully in alignment with where I needed to be. And two, because I was just, avoiding it. I was avoiding it through work. I was avoiding it through networking. I was avoiding it through socializing and drinking wine all the time. And I was also numbing it with medication because, when you have issues, you go to the doctor and they say, okay, well, we got a pill for that. So
Exactly, exactly. Pharma loves that. Pharma's like, "Yes, let me do this
exactly.
next one for you." And
Yeah,
and for listeners listening, there are individuals where that's been a game changer and
absolutely.
others where it's not been a game changer. So I want to be clear about that. Yeah.
Yes, for some people, medication is wonderful. For me, I would say it was doing more harm than it was doing good because I was ultimately just suppressing all that I really needed to address and really needed to work on. So I had the medication, I had the, excessive calendar. I was always either networking, working, or socializing, and I had the medication. So all of that was the perfect concoction to just keep putting everything down. But it got to the point where, the insomnia got worse, the panic attacks got longer, and that was just my internal system saying, you need to listen to this, and I'm not going to let you not listen to this. So, I kind of got to a breaking point where I said, I just can't do this anymore. And I knew that there was another path for me. And I always kind of knew that. I always knew that there was something that I needed to do that was very important work. And I just couldn't figure out what it was. Like helping people was really my intent. I just didn't know the way. I was trying to find it through corporate and what type of like mission I could serve for somebody else. And that was always what I thought I was going to do, or nonprofits and boards. And I did all that. I just wasn't really hitting it. So, let's see, in 2020, no, 2019, actually, I had my first experience working with psychedelic medicine in a different country. And through that experience, it just totally showed me like all of the cages I had created for myself in the shoulds and shouldn'ts and this kind of like life that I thought I was supposed to have. And then I created my goals. I hit it all. I got there. And then I was like, what is this though? It doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right. So because of that, the medicine really helped to show me that I had created something that was maybe beautiful, but at the same time, not for me. So there was a lot of undoing that I needed to do. And I remember it kind of showed me who I was without all of the things that I had created and without all of the shoulds and shouldn'ts. And as it started to come back on, as the medicine wore off, I was like, no, I don't want to go back to that. So I realized like, hey, I have a lot of work to do. So I would say that after that, I just went down this path of just really undoing and unlearning. And through that, I started to do a lot more deep work. I started training for psychedelic assisted therapy to just learn more about the medicine and what it does for people. I started working with a Jungian psychologist because traditional therapy just wasn't working for what I was going through. So I did that for a few years. And, those experiences were so transformational for me that I just knew that I had to find a way to bring that to other people. So I ended up quitting traditional corporate. I started a consulting company called the Sage Collective. And the mission and intent there was first to integrate psychedelic medicine into the traditional medical or traditional health ecosystem. But now it's kind of shifted a bit to more alternative, like all types of alternative care. And then also, I trained as a Jungian coach, and I've been doing Jungian coaching for the last 2 years as well. And it's been such a beautiful transition, and lots of learning and starting these two businesses and leaving the traditional corporate world. But it's been something that I found so profound. And I was able to I quit drinking, I got off all the medications, and I just find that now with all this work too, I'm just coming deeper and deeper into myself. And through all of that, I'm able to kind of offer that to other people too, which has been really beautiful.
That is an amazing. I love the full story. And the thing is that the first half of your journey, I know there are a gazillion listeners that are like, "Oh, that resonates with me." And especially ones that have had significant trauma, and we have this built into we're going to overcome it by being successful in these areas. And our success to us at that point is the house, the marriage, the job, the bonus checks, the awards, the promotions, the
Mhm.
accolades in those areas. And I find that a lot, especially in individuals that have childhood trauma that has not been filtered through, because that is something that is an external affirmation that helps us deal with we think it helps us deal with, and it really kind of masks the internal
Mhm.
piece that we see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just mention on that you're 100% right. It is the external validation and your worth. For me with sales, it was okay. I will go into sales because then I don't need someone else to tell me how much I'm worth through my salary. I will earn that myself. So I'll prove my worth through my mission and my bonus, and it's an interesting dynamic, that kind of external validation that you are seeking through a sales role or can find yourself seeking through a sales role. But the interesting thing is it's never good enough. It's never enough money.
Yep.
You're never high enough. It's always, what have you done for me lately? And I find this with a lot of salespeople, and I actually work with a lot of salespeople now on this exact thing, because we find ourselves kind of seeking that to prove our worth and prove our value, but it will never actually fulfill it. The
Yep.
money will never be enough. I remember making like more money than I ever thought I was going to make, and it was never enough to really give me that feeling. So you're exactly right what you said there.
So what I want to do is I want to back up just a little bit and talk about your life before these healing journeys. Okay. What really resonates to me is before I went back to get my degree in biomedical engineering, I worked in finance.
Mhm.
And like you, I had a lot of childhood trauma, and I did really well as well. And I hated that at the beginning every month, everyone was the same. It was like you're a brand new quota. Once again, it didn't matter what you did. It's what have you done for me lately, right? And I hated that. And I think too for people that have that trauma and they're looking for that external validation, to have to redo that every single month is
Yeah.
awful. Oh, right.
Never good
So
enough. Never good
yeah,
enough.
exactly, exactly. So, but I want to tie to what were some of the things that stood out that now you look at it and you're like, okay, these were some of the symptoms of the way that my body was reacting subconsciously to these stressors or this burnout. What do some of those look like? Because I want the listeners to try and hear some of those, and then maybe pause for a moment themselves and think, am I experiencing some of these in my life? Because I think that will help them understand the work that you do, why it's so important, and how they might be able to integrate it into their lives.
Yeah, great question. So, for me, it was just like, what is happening in my body? For me, it was just so many of these alarms were showing up in my body. And, that's ultimately what these kind of conditions are. So, anxiety, I was just feeling so many nerves throughout my body and like this sense of doom, just like something was wrong. And I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I just always felt like this sense of doom or something bad was going to happen. And it impacted my sleep a lot. So there was a lot of sleepless nights. And I think I would question, is this my right path? I feel like there's something else for me, but I wasn't necessarily acting on it. So when you have this kind of calling or this inkling of, hey, there might be something more, but you just keep pushing forth ahead and saying, no, this is the path, this is what I'm doing, I've worked so hard to get here, this is the goal. Eventually other things are going to catch up and say, hey, I'm going to keep firing this alarm until you will finally respond to it. So I was getting a lot of visceral feelings in my body. So I would have either mini panic attacks or very large panic attacks. There was a lot of questioning around, is this something I really want to do for the rest of my life? Is this really going to bring me value? I think, you can get more of this sadness when you're not taking action. So I think depression is more, the way to get out of depression is ultimately action and creativity. You actually have to start to pull yourself and get some movement. For me, it was these very visceral feelings that were in my body, and this kind of just this knowing that there was something more. And because I wasn't listening to it and I wasn't acting on it, and I just kept going full steam ahead and kept trying to prove the worth and kept trying to get, higher on the scoreboard and kept trying to make more money. And it's like, well, when I make this money, I can do something on my own. When I do make this money, then it'll be I've kind of proved to myself or proven here that I've made it, and then I can go. So it was always this field post or this gold post that I kept pushing back and pushing back and pushing back, even though there was something in me and saying, hey, this doesn't feel right, or there might be something else. So it was really just a lot of physical feelings, visceral feelings. So for me, that's always a huge red flag.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, so in thinking about that, what what do you think most executives misunderstand the most about their own stress?
Mm. They think it's normal and it's acceptable and it's something that everyone experiences. And yes, in the society, that is very true. I think that they just accept it as a standard experience of being an executive and may not make the adjustments that they need to do in their life to resolve it. Because one of the things that I think is really important, I know this from, my days as a corporate exec, it was always, you just can't stop moving. Go, go, go.
Right.
Get it done as much as possible. I can give more, working all hours, there's more I can give. And now looking back now, I realize how untrue that actually is. You know, sure, I was producing, right? I was very productive and I was constantly producing, but was I really creating? Was I really building something that was so profound, or was I in this constant like get done? And that's really being in your masculine. That's being in this kind of like assertive, get it done, make things happen, take the action. And yes, that is super necessary, especially in that role. But we also need to be in that feminine. These are non-gender. When I say this, masculine and feminine, these are just qualities that every single human being has. And the masculine tends to be the assertive, the get things done, that action oriented, the structured, the discipline. And then the feminine is where we actually like relax and rest and create. It's where all of the creation comes from. So I find now that if you're having that tremendous amount of stress, it's totally preventing you from actually evolving, growing. And I mean, there's some evolution there, right? Because it's force, it's pushing you, but it really does prevent you from learning at your full capacity. When you're in chronic stress, you can't really learn as well as you need to. And that's obviously really important for growth as leaders. And you can't create. It turns off the part of you that is really strong in creation. So we need to be in a calm state, in a restful state, in order to create. And to be the most successful leader and executive, you have to be creative. You have to constantly be recreating and creating everything. So I think to just assume that stress is a part of it and that it's standard and you just have to deal with it, I think that's a total red flag. That if you have the stress, you need to find those ways to step out of that stressful space so that you can step into creation, because creation is the most important thing that you can do for your success.
I think that's a big piece. I think as well that people assume this is part of the game. And in order to do this, in order to be at this level, this is what I have to deal with because that's what everyone does. And also I shouldn't talk about it to other people because no one wants like, yeah, welcome to my world kind of phrases. And they don't realize that it can be It can be something completely different. And then when you do realize it and you look back and you're like, all those years wasted.
Oh my God.
Man, if I which I hope some listeners now are thinking about this and thinking about that as well. And how can I now front load the best part of my life next by thinking about some of these changes that you can make. So when you think about traditional solutions, okay, versus alternative medicines and alternative solutions and where they may fall short, what was helpful about traditional approaches in your experience? Like what were some of the things that were a benefit?
Mhm. Absolutely. Oh, and I'll just mention on the creation piece, we're so used to being productive and we think we're getting so much done. The times where I've given myself a lot of rest, when I came back from that, I would
Yes.
probably do like, days worth of work and just be able to bang it out in a short period of time. And that time of just sitting and being and allowing things to come through for you. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're doing something that might have taken you days to do is so incredibly important. It's so powerful. So I'll just add that. But back to the traditional therapy. So look, I think with medication, uh, there were times where, with what I was going through, it helped me, I think to get through those periods that were really challenging. So, but they're generally meant to be short term, not to stay on something like that, to stay on those things for well over a decade. So, having something for a short period of time to work through a challenging time when in need at a young age and not knowing what else to do, I think it did help me in that respect. But again, I would have liked to not continue on with it. I think when you're dealing with like loss of a child or loss of something, like some people really are going to need something to help them with, short term. With therapy, I did find it helpful, to go through, like, certain techniques, like learning body scans and those types of things, so I did find that helpful, and, at the time, I think just being able to vent and talk through things because I hadn't shared with what I'd gone through, I hadn't told anybody about it, nobody knew, so having a space where I could just safe space to sit and talk was really important and really helpful for me.
And I think when I think too about body scans, and I think that's when we're starting to edge a little bit into what a lot of people think of as alternatives. Because when I talk to people about where things sit in their body or in their gut, or as you were saying, in their heart muscles and in some of these different places, initial response for a lot of people is like, oh, now you're getting into woo woo stuff. And it's like, no, 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 wait, if you actually pause and pay attention to where things are happening with you within your body, the amount it will tell you is tremendous. And I think that's maybe the first step into thinking that there are alternative ways to be able to navigate this journey that we're going to talk about. So, speaking of that, where do you think that traditional medicine was not to the level of what you needed? Like, where did it fall short from your perspective?
Well, it just numbed me, it numbed
Yes.
me, and that was not what that's not for me, it was not a healthy route, I needed to face my demons, I needed to face my darkness, I needed to face the pain, I needed to feel the feelings, so, while I said, "Yeah, sure," it probably helped me for, like, a period of time where I didn't know what else to do, but in the reality of it, looking back, I never would have touched it. I wouldn't have worked with it though, and I say that out of respect for everybody, because some people do need it and it's very helpful for people. And that's, if it is, then that's wonderful. I think for me, it suppressed it and it kept me in loops. For me,
Yes.
I kept talking about the same thing and I was getting in loops of just talking about everything. And really, when you have something happen to you, you have, so if you have a trauma or PTSD, right? There's a visceral experience that creates like this energy in your body, right? It's an energetic reaction that you have. If you're not able to process it and it can't leave, then it has to go somewhere. So animals, for example, if they have a traumatic experience, you'll see, you can Google this on YouTube and you'll see they'll just go and shake. You'll see, a massive animal lay on its back and start, convulsing. And it's shaking the trauma and the energy out of its body. And then it gets up and walks away like nothing happened. We haven't been taught how to handle emotions and trauma. So when a traumatic experience happens and the experience is so painful, that energy, if not processed, like I said, it doesn't leave your body. It gets stored in your body and it goes in layers. So it'll go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into your body. So it's creating so much dysregulation within your system. And then that's where over time that can lead to certain things like disease and like cancer. We don't talk about it much in the West that unprocessed trauma and unprocessed emotions, unresolved emotions can lead to disease and cancer. So we do have to find ways to move these out of our body. And it can be through talk and expression because you are taking something that's in there and moving it. But somatic movement is super important. I think dance is probably one of the best ways to move things out. Even like playing instruments, finding ways to be creative, putting your emotions into art or into some sort of activity, gardening, just finding ways to move this stored stuff out of us is so incredibly important. Even like, sports and really intentionally working through that.
I think I used to do my very first podcast was a mental wellness podcast, and I loved talking to centers where their treatment approach was multimodality. And
Yes.
so they did all like they did the sound baths, they did the meditation, they did mindfulness, they did art, dance,
Hmm.
equestrian, hypnotherapy, all of these type things because I believe as well that one approach, one thing may not be the end all be all for everyone. Like art may not be the outlet that helps everyone overcome. Music might be, or writing might be, or there might be all these things. So I'm a big advocate of treatment programs that offer up a breadth of these things so that you can find what it is that you can really lean into to help you recover and then reach to where you can be your best self, is the ultimate goal.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, yeah, there like we have different layers of our being, right? So trauma gets stored in the different layers of our body and also different layers of our being. So there's not one modality that's going to be able to like do everything, you know? Plant medicine, psychedelics obviously are huge catalysts for transformation, but then you need to do something with all of that stuff that came up, right? So you're going to need to then integrate and process and still kind of move the stuff that's stored in the body. So I agree 100%. And I think the one thing we forget too about healing is how healing joy is and finding things that make you happy. Because so many times we're like, oh, we have to just go into therapy or we have to do more work, more healing, more, shadow work. I do shadow work all the time. So I'm a huge proponent of shadow work. But I have gotten lost in the shadow work because, if you're just working in the unconscious and working on all of the darkness, you can get lost in it and you have to come up for air. And some of the most, I think, healing things that you can do for yourself is laughter, is finding things
Yes.
you can play and find joy. So I always like if people are really struggling, I'm like, what are you doing for joy? What are you doing to be creative? Are you, what do you love to do? Do you love to dance, sing, do art, paint, do those things, pottery, go to comedy shows, like whatever it is, like find the things that light you up and bring you joy and do them. And they will help pull you out of the vortex that these, mental health conditions can get you stuck in.
I would encourage the busy professional who's listening to this. And now, you know the adage, if you don't have time to go walk in the park for 15 minutes, then you need to go walk in the park for an hour.
Yes.
And so I would encourage the person who's too busy, and also I would say to you, you cannot say to Angela that you are too busy to do things because I get what you're saying, but I am busy as well. I would say a life hack for that is to schedule it on your calendar. Like pause this interview right now and schedule something fun, something that is not achievement based, that
Mhm.
you're just going to do it to have fun, to bring joy, to laugh, whatever. Put it on your calendar, block it off, and then make sure you come back to the rest of the episode. But go ahead and do that now because I promise you, if you do it, It's like in couples and relationships, scheduling a date night to actually have quality time with your significant other. I think that's really important. So thinking
Agreed.
about that, I think that to me is one of the answers to the question I'm about to ask you. It's one of the things that I think a lot of people overlook. So from your perspective, or we're looking at an executive, what blind spots do you repeatedly see in senior leaders? Because I know you do a lot of executive coaching and coaching for teams and assistance in this area. So, what are some blind spots that you repeatedly see in those leaders?
I think it's the rest and the time for creation. Like, I think people are so used to productivity being the means of success that they forget the time for creation. And scheduling that time actually, like I'll work with people on actually putting time in their calendar, like creative time. And that means that
Yes.
you're just sitting there with no to-do list. You're actually like sometimes you're literally just sitting there and you're sitting on the couch and you're at your desk and you're just like allowing stuff to come through. And I find that to be when some of the most profound ideas or the most profound problem solving can happen. Even, going into nature, you mentioned that nature
Yes.
is such an incredible medicine, but also such an incredible way to, I think, activate parts of you or parts of your brain that might not otherwise be on. So bringing a journal and going and sitting by the water along a tree, like you can do some of your best work there. You can solve so many problems, especially if there's stuff going on like relationally. That's the place to go. So I really think of just kind of like getting out of the grind and just ways that you can do the really deep work. And, shadow work is something I mentioned before, but that's another area that I think is incredibly important because oftentimes we think, we're working our way up. We're execs, we're top, we must be the best at all these things and worked really hard to get there. But oftentimes there's aspects of ourselves that we've suppressed that sit in the unconscious that we're not fully aware of. And then all of a sudden we get super reactive or we have a trigger, or we're projecting something onto someone, or let's say we're really like triggered by somebody who's having like more success, or you're not feeling good enough. Like all of these are signs that there's something in your unconscious that is shadow material that really needs to be worked through. Like envy is another one. That's actually a really inspiring emotion to have. It's not a bad one. It's just what you do with it, right? You can have that and say, oh, well, that I recognize that that's something in me that I see in them that's waiting to come alive. So I think
Yeah,
that's
it can
something
be motivational,
totally,
right? It
totally,
can
yeah.
be motivational and it can be destructive. And
Yes,
it depends on what you do with it. I want to go back and double click on the nature piece and by the stream. And one of the things that I believe a lot of, especially the people who say, I don't have time to do this, right? And they don't understand the value of it, is that you don't realize that, for example, so I live a couple of miles. I work at Emory University. I live a couple of miles from it. And many days I walk to work and I walk through these this gorgeous streets with, right now it is the end of March in Atlanta. All the dogwoods and azaleas are blooming and the tulips are popping up. And when you put yourself in that environment, it's everything. It's all of your senses are now being lifted up and energized. My sense of smell from the flowers, the vibrant colors are triggering different things within my brain. The breeze on my face as I'm walking. Also the increase in my heart rate because I'm doing a little bit of exercise is getting my blood moving. Like every single sense is becoming active and absorbing. And I think one of the things I would tell people to not do is don't use that moment to work. Instead, pause in that moment and appreciate the breeze, the sun on your face, whatever it is in that instance. And I think and the other thing when you're talking about like pottery and things like that, it also helps to trigger a different part of your system that
yes.
isn't the burnt out, overstressed analytical piece that you're utilizing. So you get that extra piece of balance as well.
Absolutely. And that's another thing I'll bring up is have a hobby. Something that you've always wanted to do. For example, 3 years ago, I picked up the harp, and that's an incredibly hard instrument to play. And I just turned 41, so here I am, almost 40 years old, saying now I'm going to play the harp, and I had no idea how hard it was. I just had to do these things. Don't look into it. Like acupuncture school, I did not know that that was actually med school. I was like, oh, this can't be that bad. And yeah. So same thing with the harp, and but something in me was like, I have to do this. And you're right. It's like since I've been doing playing the harp, it has opened up a whole nother capacity within my brain.
Yes.
And the way I'm able to, let's say even handle resolution or handle, challenges with people or problem solving, or just the way things now process through my brain, or even allowing stuff that maybe I hadn't worked through before can now process and move through in a much smoother way, because I'm learning a new language with the note reading, and then I'm turning on a new aspect of my brain and creating neuroplasticity in there, so I'm getting new brain synapses. So by doing a new hobby that's fun, that you enjoy, you're benefiting yourself in all areas of your life. And because you're feeding into something that brings you joy, and you're learning something new that makes you that brings you bring that into your career as well in all ways.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm a big lover of hobbies. And I'm actually the person, I have a lot of hobbies. So I've also written blog posts and talked in articles about, I love being able to do a whole bunch of different things. And I don't have to be a master of any of them
Yeah.
because I find joy in them. And I do beekeeping and I love spending time with the bees, which is very therapeutic, right? And I can't wait to resume to wood turning and blacksmithing and doing some of these things. And I'm not the world's best at any of them. And I don't care. They're fun, right? And they're cool hobbies to have and they're escapes from other things. So I'm a big believer in that. Now, I want to dig a little bit in because you've mentioned shadow work a couple of times and we haven't really explained to the audience what that is. So, can you tell us, kind of in layman's terms, what that is and also why you're such a big believer of utilizing this, especially when you're thinking about a high powered executive or someone who is reaching the ends of burnout? Why would they want to potentially do this type of work?
Mm. Shadow work is like I think one of the most important things that you can do along your healing journey, and honestly, like even from your professional journey, because you're more consciously aware of all of you, so that you're not super reactive or not responding in ways that, let's say, you may regret, because you are aware of all the different aspects of you and what you're dealing with. So shadow is effectively the parts of yourself that you have suppressed. It could be memories or experiences. It could be parts of yourself that you're ashamed of. So lots of things around shame and guilt, but it can also have your hidden talents and, your creativity. Like maybe there's something that you've always wanted to do or you see other people doing and you're like, wow, that's incredible, but I can never do that, and you're afraid to express it. But like I said, if you're triggered or envious of something, oftentimes it's because that's a part of you that really does want to be expressed, but that shadow is in the way, so you can't get to it. So what shadow work does is, and I'll mention, your shadow will most often be recognized through your projections onto others, through triggers, through times when you react in ways that you are, let's say, not so proud of, through your limiting beliefs, your self sabotaging habits, your fears. So that tends to be reflective of what the shadows are. So, shadow work is, rather than allowing those to come out in very reactive ways, it's when you go and proactively acknowledge and work on them, so that you are working to identify what they are. You're bringing them into conscious awareness by going in and doing the work. Because once you bring awareness to some of these things, that's a pretty significant component of the transition of bringing something from shadow into something that can really benefit you. Because where there's a shadow, there's also a light. Where there's something that's maybe a weakness, there's also a strength. So what we want to do is we want to go in and find these shadow material and then understand what are they trying to do? Oftentimes, there's some level of protection that the shadow
Yes.
is trying to
Yes.
do. So if we can work with it and understand what is it trying to protect, what does it really want underneath it all, it often just like really kind of like subsides, and then all of a sudden, this energy shifts into something really beautiful and really powerful. That's now something that can really support you rather than hold you back. So on the other side of the shadow is always this gem. It's always this like really beautiful power that you have access to. You just have to do the work to go through the muck to bring it there. Like for me, I used to have such a fear of public speaking. It wasn't actually on a stage. I could speak on a stage, but getting on a podcast where it was being recorded and then shared
Like today?
like today, oh my god, I've been doing this for a few years now, but when I first started doing them, I wouldn't share them with anybody, or I wouldn't tell anyone I did it, or I would cancel it because I would get too nervous. And that was a shadow of I think probably, there's lots to it, but now obviously I've done a lot of work, so I really enjoy them, but it was something that I had to go through so much like ickiness and muck to get through. And obviously, like when there's something that has that much level of fear, you always know it's part of your path. Like you're actually meant to be out there speaking if you're terrified to be out there speaking. It's something you have to do. So I personally always look at like, what's the fear? What are you afraid of? Because that's the portal. That is the portal to some of the most beautiful things that you have access to in your life, but you need to find that fear and then you need to walk towards it and walk through it.
One of the things that when I think of doing shadow work, doing inner work, doing all of that, what I think the greatest outcome of it is freedom.
Oh, yes.
Is it gives you such so I've talked on this podcast many times about an experience of mine. I was very severely abused as a child, and I realized as an executive at one point when I was doing a lot of therapy in that I was reacting to this other fellow male executive who was always yelling at everyone, right? But when he was yelling at me, I was reacting in the same way I would when my dad talked to me the same way. And I suddenly realized it one day, wait, it's not him and him as a human, as an executive or whatnot. I'm translating it internally to who I was as a 6-year-old girl with my father, right? And I had built so many fears around being good enough or proving people wrong and all of these things through the first, 30 something years of my life. But then when I eventually then started doing the work and realized, wait, that's what it is. And so now when I recognize my reactions falling into that category, I can stop and be like, no, wait. I am not 6 years old. This is not, this person is just having a bad day. It has nothing to do with me. I don't need to prove myself to anyone. The level of joy and the level of personal success and the level of positive energy and people wanting to be around me and wanting to do things with me and collaborate with me skyrocketed at that point because I was no longer being held back by my reactions to things I didn't even understand.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that is that freedom that I would want any human, first off, but especially leaders to really be able to encompass, because what you then put out into the world, it's going to go to the rest of your team, to your board, to your customers, to your family, to everyone around you. So I think even more for people who have that level of responsibility to do this type of work is so important, because then it's not just a positive impact on you, but on your entire legacy and everyone that surrounds you.
Oh, yeah. I don't think people realize how much they're doing unconsciously. Like, I really
Yes.
don't think people are aware of it. And it takes doing this really deep, hard work to understand that. And I always kind of look at this like where you are in your life, there's like a certain level of density. that you're in, and you can kind of feel it, and the more conscious you become and the more aware you become and the more you do this work, that density starts to kind of fade away and break away. And then you're in this space where it's like, wow, things are a lot easier to make happen. Things are now actually coming to me. And you start Jungian is very much about synchronicities where you just, things just start happening for you. And there's all these synchronicities. And the more conscious you become and the more you work on the shadows, you bring yourself the shadows into the light, and then through bringing them into the light, you're then integrating them into yourself, and you're not shunning them. You're not saying, no, that's not me. That will keep you fragmented. It's part of yourself and part of your soul is fragmented off. And that's what causes a lot of challenges with mental health, anxiety, depression. You're fragmenting pieces of you. And the whole path of this Jungian work is individuation and wholeness. So to have wholeness, you have to accept all of you. And the more you keep certain parts in the dark, that's the more you're going to have those like unexpected responses of rage or of anger where you're like, God, why did I act that way?
Why did I do
Why did
exactly?
I do that? Like, I know not to do that. And why? It's because that energy, these energies that you have, an energy that's represented or connected to anger or connected to experience that you had when you were younger, the more you kind of repeat these cycles and don't do the work, it feeds it, right? And it gets bigger, and the energy gets bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. And eventually they turn into these complexes. And these complexes can almost possess you. So they can kind of step in. And you're like, God, that's not me. Like, why, something almost like takes over you in a way.
Yes.
It's you, it's part of you, but it's this energetic complex that has kind of stepped in and pulled you away from your truest self. And it's all that stuff that's been built up that's now responding. So it's not responding from a place of your truest self. It's responding from the experiences that you had. And to your point, if there's a trauma, then it will bring you back to that state. So it'll bring you back to, acting almost like you're 6 or 10 or 12 years old, whatever it is.
How do you think, thinking about from the corporate side, how do you see some of this unresolved internal stress showing up in team culture?
Oh gosh, that's another thing that happens very unconsciously. It just becomes the norm. People are just used to it, and people are always kind of like on edge and running around, and focusing on being productive, getting things done as much as possible. And I think it's just something that people just accept. It's almost like you start to have this emotion, and you're around this emotion all the time that eventually you just get so used to the emotion that you don't realize that you're even feeling that way. Like if you're
Yes.
feeling with a little
Yes.
bit of sadness or a little bit of sadness, all of a sudden you're feeling this grief, but you don't even recognize it until something happens. You're like, wow, I've really been sitting in this and had no idea. It's the same thing with chronic stress. Eventually you just get used to it. And then your nervous system is adapting. So now your nervous system is just so used to chronic stress, and that's almost what it's kind of like searching for and almost is expecting to be around. And it's extremely unhealthy for obviously a variety of reasons. But yeah, I think it's just something that just runs very unconsciously across certain cultures.
So, in thinking about then on the other side, what do you believe emotionally regulated leadership actually looks like?
I think it's conscious leadership. I think it's conscious leadership. I think it's people that have done the work. I think it's people that understand what they're carrying. It's understanding that other people are carrying their own things. I think it's not taking things personally. You mentioned that earlier. Yeah.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
taking things personally, that everyone is kind of coming from their own worlds and with their own perspectives and their own experiences, and everyone is just trying to do their best, but everyone is
Yep.
kind of living from that experience. So to not take things personally if someone is responding to you in a certain way or reacting in a certain way. And I think just like openly transparent communication is so incredibly important too. Just the more transparent and the more compassionate you can be. Like the more compassionate leaders can be, the better off the world, honestly. And just looking at everyone as, this kind of this very important piece to the puzzle that's doing their absolute best and kind of treating them like a soul, not just like a worker. Just like knowing that, this person is here and they have a very real value, that they're bringing. So seeing the value in everyone and just working with absolute integrity in everything you do. What I find is that in especially in our society, we work and live so much up here.
Yes.
The intellect for everyone is strong, and it's almost too strong. It's almost like the computer has gone haywire. The AI has
Yep.
gone in overdrive. So everyone's up here, and even when we're trying to problem solve, we think that we're problem solving in a good way, and then oftentimes it's just so much analysis that it's not really that effective. It's just kind of like looping, and we think, oh, we're doing all the work. We're thinking through this. So what I always like to say is like, are you leading from the heart? Where are you leading from? Are you leading from here? Are you leading from here? This is the real mind. The real mind is the heart. This is where we should be operating from. And the heart is oftentimes what suffers. You see a lot of people with heart issues, and that's all a function of not listening and caring and responding to your heart.
I think too, and actually, listeners, you can pull it up. Like broken heart syndrome is a actual heart impact that happens, and people die from it, and it is a legit thing. Like it's not just something that was just made up to talk about like a breakup or something, right? Like it has caused significant, serious
Mhm.
cardiac issues in people and has an impact. I think what I like to see as well from leaders is we talk about seeing humans as humans, right? Thinking about the person and understanding that they are also going through their own life. And then to instead of when you see, for example, someone on a team that is not performing or behaving in a way that would lead to the greatest level of success for them or their team or the company, is to become is to react in a state of curiosity
Oh,
first instead of judgment first. And I
yes.
find that judgment first has been the way that leaders have done it forever. And that's not the culture that is going to lead us to be having the best companies, the best ROIs, the best, everything. It's leading with the curiosity first and seeing the human. Then you have the opportunity to actually get to what the root problem is, fix it, and grow together and become amazing together.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at your team as your family, like that's really how you need to operate, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It needs to be a family dynamic. It's a unit, right? It's like unions operate that way. They're family, they're brother and sister, and the way that they care for their members is so much different and than how you traditionally do in corporate. And I think curiosity is such an incredible word for for so many things. I always say if you're scared of something, rather than being scared, be curious. To
Hmm.
your point, if somebody's not operating to the best of their ability, well, why? What is it? Well, are they maybe in the wrong role? Is something going on at home? Are they really struggling with something? Or maybe there's just somewhere else that they would be so much better off for everybody. So this just open level of communication and just really trying to understand and just like really seeing someone, who they are and learning about them and what are their values and what are their strengths and what are they good at? And just like not operating in this hierarchy. I don't believe in the hierarchy. It's like we're all sitting together. We all have incredible talents. We all have valuable value that we bring to the table. And let's make sure that everyone is sitting in the place where they're able to be in their value, be seen for their value, and create from that value. And to really have full, I would say, ability to give that value. So to not have like micromanagement around that, to really allow that person to almost act as like a CEO of their own role.
Yes.
Everyone should kind of be a CEO of their position and say, I trust you. I got it. Like show me what you got and then we'll tweak and then we'll work together from there and really like collaborate together.
I don't have it up here, but I have a mug that is, and it's actually with our branding that we trademark Be Brave, Be Badass. And so we have an Etsy store where you can buy some of that stuff if you want some badass stuff. And one of my favorite things is a mug and it says CEO of my own damn life.
That's
And I
very
think that that's what it is. And the only way you can be the CEO of your own damn life, of your own job or of your own whatever, is if you become curious about all of these different things. And I think when you were talking about, for example, public speaking or things that you're fearful of, once again, be curious about why are
yes.
you fearful of this? And oftentimes, if you take the moment to do that and break it down, you suddenly realize, wait, I I don't need to. I need to jump in. I
Yes.
just need to dig in and do it. And I think too, another piece that I see for individuals that is really holding them back for being their best selves is their willingness. I coach a lot of people and I say, for example, for their pitches for companies, I'm like, okay, I'm going to send you the recording of your pitch. I
Mhm.
want you to watch it over and over. And they cringe. They're like, I don't want to see myself. I can't stand to hear my voice. Like, much like you were talking about for the podcast, right? And I am just like, trust me, do it. Like literally, I still watch the things that I do and think, okay, I need to grow and improve in this area. I still watch other people that are podcast hosts and think, okay, that's something I need to try and emulate. I love that they did this, that, or the other. I'm going to experiment with it. So if
Mhm.
you're afraid to do that retrospective of yourself, and do that, then that's another gift that you're just throwing away.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love when you're bringing up this concept of fear too, because that's another thing. If you want to have the best team, you need to hype them up and you need to put full confidence and trust in them because guess what? If they
Yes.
have an ounce of fear, if they're sitting there carrying fear around like, is it going to be good enough? Am I allowed to do this? What if I get in trouble? You're not going to get the best of them. You need to
Nope.
be hyping them up so that they're confident to come with you with new ideas and new ways of doing things and to be able to even sit in like their best self. If they're carrying this fear and this lack of confidence, it impacts everybody, the work product that they do, how they relation with other people, with clients. So just really, really, truly, like if you have people on your team, you better pick the right people and you better really believe in them. And then you better tell them that you believe in them and show them that you believe in them because that's what you're going to bring the absolute best out of them. And they're going to be motivated and excited and want to be there. Like who doesn't want somebody to believe in them, you know?
Yes.
That's what keeps them going. And that's also like literally, like I said, just brings out the absolute best in them.
And the opposite of this, if you're a leader, it's like you're making people wear backpacks and you're just walking around and putting big rocks in them. You're putting a rock of fear. You're putting
Yeah.
a rock of criticism. You're putting a rock of micromanagement. You're putting a rock of giving them a hard time if they take time off versus celebrating time off. You're putting
Mhm.
all these additional rocks into this backpack that they're carrying around with them. And now they're carrying around with them in their meetings and with their customers and with their colleagues. And it's now this additional weight and burden that's slowing them down, that's stressing them out, that is causing them pain and anxiety and all these additional things that's holding them back. Imagine if instead you took out that rock of micromanagement, you took out that rock of fear, you took out that rock of criticism,
Oh, yeah.
and now look at the energy that they have to go and be their best self. And you, as a leader, have the ability to do all of those things.
Yes, I mean, fear is a major energy leak, right? So if you are putting any level of fear, or like you said, kind of these like negative perspectives of people, they're just draining them. They're just energy leaks, and they're not going to be fully productive. They're not going to be all there, and yeah, it can be detrimental for everybody. So I love that concept.
So tell me, what do you think that corporate America and just organizations in general are still getting wrong about mental health? And I want to say this, like, we are recording this in March of 2026. And we saw after COVID a big shift towards a focus and towards people becoming more willing to talk about mental health. But now we're 6 years out. And what do you think the organizations are still getting wrong about it?
What I see is that they're still focused on conventional treatments. And that's really what they have access to. It's like, well, the insurance company covers the medications and we're paying for 5 therapy visits. So that's it. And I don't think that that's the right approach. I don't think that that's only going to work for a handful of people. And so many people want different ways. I think there's so many, I think that they need to start looking into alternative therapies, alternative medicines, allowing people to have more access to, um, whether it's like, going to different retreats where they're doing more stuff together to kind of like tap into their creativity, giving them access to activities that can activate their creation and activate
Yes.
ways that they connect with each other. And like, no, it doesn't even have to be specifically work related, but I think those types of things, if you're bringing a level of joy in and you're bringing in kind of these community functions that let's say they're not able to get access to outside of corporate, it ignites something in their spirit. You're kind of activating parts of them that are starting to die off. And I think really over time, what happens with mental health, it's just parts of you just keep dying off and dying off and quieting down. And really what we need, it's like we need life, we need creation. So how can you bring activities or events in or alternative therapies or music or whatever it might be, drum circles, to bring them in to activate people, activate life in people, and remind them that they're very much alive and they're very much here, and there's parts of them that are extremely healthy, to connect to joy, to connect to happiness, to connect to play. So I think play is something that's come up a lot, play and joy. It's like, we forget to play and we forget what joy feels like. So while doing things around mental health and yes, treating what's going on, also giving people ways to remember what joy feels like and remember what play feels like and tapping into creation. I really think like giving them ways to just be creative will help them in so many other areas of their life, and finding ways obviously like that it correlates to work, if that makes sense, then that could be good. But even something totally separate just kind of sparks something in them.
I love this. So I interviewed Corinne Canty, and she is the CEO of Shift to Play. And she does a lot of corporate events where they
Mm.
bring play in and bring in things like improv and things like that into the corporate setting and talks about it. It's really funny. I was just thinking about that, is that you always get these naysayers on YouTube who want to comment on something. And I remember laughing. Someone commented on one of the episodes dealing with that about it being bullshit or something like that. And I was just like, I feel very sad for you that is your perspective that you're seeing, because you're really missing out on how powerful it is. Now, you mentioned a couple of things that like the drum circle or some of these types of things. So can you give us some concrete examples of some of the clients that you work with in organizations? What are some of the things that they are bringing into their environment in addition to what you've already mentioned? Can you list a couple of maybe some concrete examples and how maybe you've seen some changes and some growth for some individuals you've worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of what I'm doing with individuals specifically is a lot around that shadow work, and I think that is a really important component because they're taking something that's like really heavy and they're shifting it into this lightness. And I'm just seeing like what comes through that is all of those things that we're talking about. Access to the creativity, access to the rest, access to the play, access to like, oh gosh, I need to treat my employees differently. I'm kind of like viewing my employees in one way, and I'm like, being a little bit of like maybe, too hard on them, and I'm not seeing all the value that they're bringing. So it's just giving them these new perspectives and this kind of lightness that I think is like incredibly important. So I think that that's an aspect. I'm working with a company that's bringing psychedelic assisted therapies to employers and unions as well. They can bring that to individuals where in Oregon and Colorado, they can actually have their employees go and receive psilocybin mushroom treatments in the
Mm-hmm.
state where it's legal, or they can have their employees access ketamine assisted therapy if eligible, if they're dealing with some really, they have certain conditions across the country. So there's, unique programs like that where they're getting access to that. And yeah, there's companies that are exploring drum circles and bringing that into their corporations. And that's just like this whole nother level of connection and team building. And like I said, just like sparking things and lighting things up in them that otherwise they may not have access to.
During COVID, I was COO of a software company. And one of the things that we did while everyone was working remote is we brought in things like mindfulness Fridays. And with someone on our team was that's what she also did, coaching and mindfulness. So then everyone who wanted to join, we would join in for what I can't remember how long it was. We did that. We also brought in lunch and learns where people could teach us about their hobby.
Uh,
So we got to see, like at that point, I used to have a gorgeous saltwater aquarium. I did a whole presentation on saltwater aquariums. I had somebody else that was in a boy band and he talked about music and we got to see those pieces. We had someone that was a chef, like did cooking and stuff. And then she made a whole bunch of things. We had someone who did something on plants.
mm,
And so that was a way that, and the thing I loved about doing those, and so listeners, I would highly recommend you do these types of lunch and learns because it allows you to see your team members and each other as humans,
Yes.
learn more about the things they're passionate about, and also find opportunities to like do things together. So it was beautiful. So some of those things were very powerful. And I think that being creative, I know a lot of companies think, oh, I'm not going to invest the money in that. But I tell you, you get the money back tenfold later by doing some of those things. And I think what I think organizations right now still have wrong about mental health is I think they still think it's an isolated thing and there's only one way to approach it. And that one way to approach it can't be impacted positively by some of these other things that we're mentioning.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important for people to step into more of the alternative approaches. I think it's really important. Like even I forgot to mention even working with things like archetypes. That's something that I found.
Describe to them what an archetype is.
Yeah, so archetypes, we all have aspects of ourselves that connect to a certain archetype. And we tend to be more dominant in a few of them and not so dominant in the others. So there's the hero archetype, that's kind of like every action hero movie that you see. There's the caretaker, there's the magician, there's the sage, there's the innocent child or the innocent, there's the lover. So working with archetypes, there's always the strengths of the archetypes and the shadow of the archetype. So I really love to work with teams and with groups around archetypes because one, we can learn more about ourselves. Like what do we represent? Which one are we more dominant in? Then we can go explore, okay, well, what are the shadows of this and how do I work through? But what I really like is actually playing in the other archetype. So there might be something inside of us that, we're a little shy or coy to be, but it's something that like we would love to step into. So I love to have people play around with like, well, if you could choose any archetype that you would love to be, but you say, hey, it's not me, then what
To
would that
think.
be? Yeah.
Right.
And then you start, doing different activities so that you can really almost like act out that archetype and explore the parts of you. Because what you're doing is you're expanding the resources that you have within you, because we have access to all of these different archetypes. Some are just not as comfortable for us. So if we can start acting out, even in like scenarios, like let's say you take a salesperson and say, well, what if you came in more as like, maybe we got someone that's like more of a tyrant in sales. Like, well, what if you stepped into the lover and you're more like the mother, how would that help you? And let's play out what that looks like. And then even doing art is another thing that I really like to pull into my work too, in my workshops that I do with groups. We can pull art into, we can look at like, okay, through art, where are we at now with this problem or this issue? And then we can use abstract art to actually give us answers to help us solve really challenging problems or to even understand ourselves better. The psyche is always trying to work with us and it's always trying to help us understand something that we need to know. And it's amazing to see how, we'll draw all these things on this piece of paper and all of a sudden there's one symbol on there. Symbols mean everything. Symbolism is how our psyche is talking to us. And it's how, it's what our dreams give to us as these hints and these tools and clues so that we can do our work and understand ourselves better. So we'll find on there, and there's one thing that we drew, and this is like the answer to everything. So we start digging into that and doing some dialogue with it, and all of a sudden, it solved our problem. So it's so cool to use these really creative ways to work through things. And even when you look at a corporation, every corporation has a shadow. Every team has different archetypes. So how do we understand what those shadows are within the corporation? How do we understand what the archetypes are around this team dynamic and say, well, hey, we're missing a really important part. We actually
Right.
need someone in this role. And someone might say, hey, I'm like that at home. I'm not like that here. Maybe I can start to show up that way, So it's really cool to just bring in these other tools to help people step into different aspects of themselves and to solve problems and learn more about themselves. It's really fun.
Yeah. I love this. I love this. Okay. So are you ready to do some rapid fire questions?
Oh, yes. I am.
Oh, yes. Yes, you are. Okay. What is one non negotiable in your daily routine?
Dream work. Dreamer. I write my dreams every morning. They've been incredible guides for me. I highly recommend get a dream book, put it down next to your pillow, tell yourself you're gonna record your dream and record it, and it'll give you some incredible insights.
Very cool. What is a book that you've recommended the most in your life?
I really love The Red Book by Carl Jung. Really that's a really neat book. It's actually a memoir of all of his dreams. And,
Oh,
he would record all his dreams, and then he would then analyze those dreams to make sense, and that helped him come up with all of his theories and all of his framework. So it's a really, really, really deep read, but really interesting.
cool. What is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Mm. Oh gosh, be bold, be creative, and don't stop dancing.
Oh, I love this. What is one thing every executive should start doing tomorrow?
Hmm. I'm torn between dream work and walking in nature. I'm gonna say dream work. Yeah, I think it's really important. I think that yeah, it'll open up your eyes to a lot of things if you start doing dream work.
And listeners, I encourage you, if you start doing it, then please post in the comments on this episode. Let us know how it went for you. Okay, it's time. My favorite time is for your favorite motivational quote. So tell us what your favorite motivational quote is and why.
Okay, so my favorite motivational quote is know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. And that's by Carl Jung. I love
And
that one.
why is it so important? I love this. Yeah, why?
Well, for me, it's like, you can learn, you can go to school, you can go to doctoral school, and, you can do all these certifications and you can learn everything that you need to know. But if you are not like living with compassion and integrity and valuing, the life and living through love and just really seeing the human across from you as this beautiful soul that's, here, in their own divinity, then I think you're missing out on life. So if we can all, and like also everyone is just also another reflection of yourself too, so I think really being able to, yeah, know everything, learn everything, get it, pick up all the techniques and tools, but you really need to be a compassionate human and see and have love for everyone around you and treat everyone with the utmost respect and integrity and expression of love. I think is really important.
Amazing. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for spending the time with us today, sharing your story and your insights. I know the listeners are going to find a lot to take away. I really hope that they've paused a couple of times and thought about how they can put these things into their calendar, how they can start doing new things, how they can think about doing the inner work. If they really want to live their best life, the best time to start is now. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. It was a fun conversation. So thank you.
Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast. To hear more interviews with industry experts and learn how to grow your career and leadership potential, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. This podcast is a production of the AGN Group. To learn more about the AGN Group, visit our website at theagnGroup.com. There, you can discover more about our services, which include hosting workshops, management consulting, brand strategy, keynote speaking, and more. Follow us on all social media channels shown on the screen and displayed in the show notes. And until next week, be brave and be badass.